aperture, aspect ratio, depth of field, bokeh, crop sensor, chromatic, aberration, DSLR, dynamic range, exposure compensation, focal length, focal distance, f-stop, full frame, hard and soft light, histogram, ISO, long exposure, manual exposure, metering, mirrorless, ISO, prime lens, noise, resolution, rule of third, shutter speed, synchronization speed, white balance, and zoom length. There are so many terms that are there in photography. Hi everyone, I am Navaneeth Krishnan, and in this video I'll be telling you top 30 terms every photographer should know. Before you get started, if you're not subscribed to my channel, please do subscribe to my channel. Let's get started. Top 30 terms every photographer should know. In this video, I'll be telling the top 30 terms every photographer should know. I'll be putting down all the terms in an alphabetical order, and I'll be explaining you on each and every term and why you should know all these terms as well. So, first, let's start with aperture. Aperture is the amount of light that enters through your camera. So, when you set your aperture number, that is the number that comes with f1.4, f1.8, f22, f11, all this number that comes with an f on your camera is an aperture number. So, as the number increases, that is, as the number becomes from f11 to f22, the amount of light coming inside the camera decreases. So as the number decreases, that is, if f becomes f1.4 or f1.8, the amount of light entering the camera will be more. So through this you can control the amount of light that is entering through your camera. That is the major thing that you can do with aperture. So aspect ratio. Aspect ratio is something to do with the height and width of your frame, or either an image or a video. So there are different aspect ratios that are 16:9, 9:16, 4:5, 5:4, 1:1. All these are various aspect ratios that we need to follow in order to post videos and photos on several social media platforms. Third one is bokeh. So bokeh basically refers to the elements that are there in the frame which are present on out of focus. So when there are smooth bokeh that is created within the frame beyond the subject, when you focus the subject and you get something like this, and you have a smooth bokeh rather than a harsh bokeh that is distracting the viewer from your subject to the bokeh, it is not something good. You should have a smooth bokeh in such as rings or heart in shapes, all these kinds, in order to have a smooth transition and your viewers do not get distracted from your subject to your bokeh. So that is the good thing to do when it comes to a bokeh. And bokeh is something that is most attracted, or the term which is very commonly used in portrait photography. And this type of making an image with the background blurred and the background is having a subject that is out of focus and that takes in some shape and gives an enlightenment to a particular frame is called as bokeh. So the next one is a crop sensor. Crop sensor is smaller than a full frame. When you shoot using a crop sensor camera, it shoots beyond the range of the particular lens that you are using. That is the major advantage of using a crop sensor lens. So this dealing and going in depth about crop and full frame is again a major subject that we have to deal with. So in this video, just have it in mind that crop sensors are the cheap cameras, and cheap cameras mostly comes with crop sensor bodies, and they shoot beyond the range of the lens that you're using. Like 1855, it shoots beyond 55 lens when you use a crop sensor, whereas when you use a full frame, that doesn't happen. The next one is depth of field. So what is depth of field? The amount of blur that is there in your frame when you focus your subject. Though this is something that I'm trying to tell you on simpler terms, but this is for you to understand what is depth of field. So when you focus your subject and your background becomes very blurred, this happens when you set your aperture to 1.8. So when you set your aperture to f11 or f8, 6.5 or something like that, your background becomes somewhat in focus. So when you go beyond like f11 or f13 or something like that, your background becomes more focused when it comes to when you compare with the subject. So this is called as the depth of field. So the more and more aperture number you set, the more and more depth of field you get. So the amount of background being blurred from the and making the subject so distinct is called as the depth of field. So the next one is DSLR. So when you go ahead and say someone that I use DSLR camera, the first thing, or rather after a few conversations, you definitely have this question of someone asking you what is the full form of DSLR. So DSLR simply means digital single lens reflex, and that is the camera that we have been using right now. So DSLR cameras are the most common cameras these days, and now trend is slowly changing, but DSLR cameras are even today the most common cameras that is being purchased in the market. The next one is exposure. Exposure basically means how light or dark your particular frame is. So this can be adjusted using certain parameters like shutter speed, ISO and aperture. So I have dealt with each and every parameter on a separate video. You can go ahead and watch those videos. So this particular term of what is an exposure is basically to do something with how bright or dark your particular frame is, and this can be decided by triggering or adjusting shutter speed, ISO and aperture, which are the three parameters of exposure triangle. Focal length. Focal length mainly is something that to do with the particular lenses. So I have a lens of 1855, then it means that the length of the particular focal length of the particular lens will be 55 mm. And if I have something like 150 500, the focal length will be 150 till 500, range between 150 and 500. If it is a 400 mm prime lens, the focal length of that particular lens is 400. So that is something to do with the range at which you can shoot your subject that is there present. So that is called as the focal length of that particular lens. The most important thing is called as a full frame. So the next one will be full frame. So previously we have discussed on what is a crop frame. So now we go ahead and talk what is a full frame. Full frame cameras are cameras that are a bit costlier, to be on simpler words, and these are cameras that exactly shoots on a particular range of lenses that you actually choose to. So like if you have a lens of 1855 and then go ahead with a full frame camera, I exactly shoot on 18 mm and 55 mm. Whereas that is not the same when it comes to crop sensor, because the crop factor of that particular body also comes into picture, and that multiplies with the range of the lenses and gives you that extra mile when it comes to a crop body and a crop sensor. So this is something to do with full frame, and I'll be explaining more about this full frame body and lenses and crop body and crop lenses in another video. So histogram is a graph that explains you the tonality of the particular image that you have shot is histogram. ISO basically explains the sensitivity of your camera towards light, and the amount of noise the camera could produce at a particular ISO is the maximum ISO limit for your particular camera. So you have to go ahead and decide the particular ISO for your camera before you start shooting and setting the highest ISO for your camera. So long exposure. So long exposure is an image that is made by intentionally closing and opening the camera for a longer duration of time. And these are the examples of long exposure shot. So in this shot, when you see the camera is made to close and open for a longer duration of time, and all the light source that passes through the camera is captured during that particular time, and the shot is made. Manual mode. Manual mode is referred to as the professional mode on a DSLR camera, or any camera for that matter, where you are able to set each and every parameter on that particular camera and utilize the gear to the maximum and make amazing creative shots all by yourself by controlling the light perfectly in and out through the camera. Metering. Metering actually refers to how the camera measures the amount of light in a particular frame and helps you calculate the amount of light and set the exposure for a particular image during that particular metering technique that you have chosen. Mirrorless has become the most common term that has been used in the photography industry over the years. Mirrorless actually builds in a camera that without any mirror, where the light is directly controlled by the sensor, through which that light directly hits the sensor and the images are made. So that is a greater technology that has been bought in, and I feel it will be taking over the DSLR cameras in upcoming years. Noise actually means the random fluctuations that are there in an image. So as you increase the ISO, the amount of noise on a particular image also increases. And similarly, as you decrease, the amount of noise also in a particular image decreases. And it basically means the amount of grains that are present in the simpler on the particular image is referred to as the noise that is there in the particular image. Prime lens is a lens of a single fixed focal length, like the 50 mm prime lens, 400 mm prime lens, 600, or just have a fixed length, and you are not in a 50 mm prime lens, you are not allowed to shoot at 51 mm or 49 mm. The lens is fixed. You don't have an ability to zoom in or zoom out, but you have an ability to focus. When you focus, you get the subject very clearly and crisp, and which stands out from the background, and you are sure to get a bokeh effect when you go ahead with shooting in a prime lens. RAW is a data direct driven from sensor, and it is also a file format. There is a separate video mentioning about why you should shoot in RAW. Go ahead and watch the video if you are keen and very interested in knowing on why you should shoot only in RAW. Resolution, the total amount of pixel in a particular image, defines the amount or the size of the particular image that you have shot. Rule of thirds. So this is a common composition technique that has been used, where you take your frame and divide into 3 horizontal and 3 vertical planes, and you use 1/3 of your frame to place your subject and leave the rest amount of space empty, and you fix your subject only in 1/3 of the frame, and that is how the shot is composed. And this is called the rule of third. Synchronization speed. It actually refers to the fastest speed at which the camera can synchronize with a flash. Shutter speed basically means the time taken by the camera shutter to close and open so that your image can be captured in a long exposure or in action. In case you want to know on how to make use of the shutter speed to capture images in action and in various situations, we have a separate video. You can go ahead and watch the video. White balance. White balance is the setting that your camera uses in order to assume the color temperature on your image. This is in simpler terms. I have made it very easy for you to understand, but in vast, white balance is a vast topic to deal with. So in simpler terms, just understand this particular thing about white balance. Zoom lens. Zoom lens are the larger ranges of lenses. So zoom lens are the telephoto lenses, are also referred to as the zoom lenses. So zoom lens are always always referred to as the not quite sharp lenses when it comes to the prime lens, all those. But in this modern updates and modern technological updates, zoom lens have proved to be very much sharper and equally sharp as the prime lens are. So I hope you are very much updated with all the terms that are used by photographers in the photography industry, and you have become quite familiar after seeing this video. We'll come up with more amazing videos. Until then, stay tuned and follow me on Instagram. Thank you.